day chat, you gotta wait chat. Gotta go vaccinate chat, get it straight chat. Girl, you look good, want you vax that thing up. You's a handsome young brother, want you vax that thing up. Dating real life, you need to vax that thing up. Feeling freaky all night, you need to vax that thing up.
Go get the shot. Go get the shot. Go get the shot. BLK says go get the shot. You wanna smash with
This is obscene.
It kind of is.
You're welcome.
Who did that?
Juvenile and Manny Fresh.
Uh-oh.
Remember Back That Thing Up? Remember those rap?
Vax
from
That
Cash
Thing
Money?
Up.
Yeah, it's Vax That Thing Up now. Anyway, I just thought you guys would love
Hey, y'all,
that.
welcome to Cross Politics Sunday Special on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Pastor Toby Chalk Knox, the Waterboy, and Jason Farley.
Just want to apologize for the way that show just opened.
Yeah.
Please accept
Get
our
ready for a
apologies.
lot more of a crazier show.
That reminded me of when they tried to teach me math with hip hop in elementary school.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Did it get gross like that?
I still can't add.
Very good. Very good.
It didn't help you at all.
Not at all. Not at all.
So maybe this will have that same effect on our country.
But did you get rhythm?
I mean, I did join a breakdancing crew.
Yeah,
so
see, that was the go.
didn't help me in my math.
Yeah, really. That's kind of funny. Think about you in a breakdancing.
As the entry drug into breakdancing was rapping math.
Rapping math, yeah. And the movie Breakin' to Electric Boogaloo.
I did that
Number
too.
2. Number 1 didn't sell you on it. You had to get to number 2.
If you breakdance a lot, like Jason Farley, you may break a bone or get cancer from breakdancing. Also have medical emergencies. We all know how quickly a healthcare need can happen.
You're just getting there. Do it.
I'm doing it right now.
Do it.
That's where Samaritan Ministries comes in, connecting hundreds of thousands of Christians across the nation who care for one another's medical needs through prayer, encouragement, and financial support, even after a breakdancing accident. It's not insurance, so you have the freedom to choose the healthcare providers, hospitals, and treatments that work best for you. So after you receive care, medical bills are sent to Samaritan Ministries, and then they'll notify members to pray for you and send money directly to you.
Because Samaritan can do math.
To pay those bills. They did not listen to rap math videos. It's biblical.
Battle rap math.
Battle rap math.
2 + 2 = 4.
It's biblical and affordable with sharing programs that start at $100 for an individual and $200 for a family of 2 or more, and you can join today. Don't wait for the unexpected to happen. Visit SamaritanMinistries.org/crosspolitics today to see if healthcare sharing is right for you. SamaritanMinistries.org/crosspolitic.
And if you missed this last week, on Thursday night, we did a special with a number of doctors, Dr. Jay Richards, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, Dr. Cole, and Dr. Wool. Yeah. It's kind of a coronavirus special. We wanted to kind of, keep pushing a right narrative, a wise narrative on what's going on. And so check out that show. Nate Wilson joined us also on that show.
Smacked you in the face. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
it's so good. It's a 2-hour show, but check that out. And then, of course, join Samaritan Ministries.
I realize it's hard to find all of the information kind of in one place.
Right.
Where it's just kind of dialed in, all the Cliff Notes version of the deep dives. It's right there.
Looking at the actual data.
Yes. Yes.
So I still think that we're kind of all in this moment,
and we have to get in those communities, and we have
Cuomo's
to
going to do this.
Doors, and we have to convince people and put them in a car and drive them and get that vaccine in their arms.
Oh, no.
I can't stop that video. I'm going to play it on every show for like the next.
If you do that, I'm going to do Vax That Thing Up. You keep it up. And we're going to be vaxxed up in a car together somewhere with Cuomo.
Like because of our show and what we've been doing.
I think you need to play that Kerry Gordon clip now.
Oh, that's going to be second segment, I guess. Yeah. You guys going to have to hold on for that.
You can hold those things together and be like,
I'll replay it. I'll replay it.
My goodness.
So anyways, I don't know if you guys.
Put you in the car. We're going to get you vaccinated.
Yeah. Make you get vaccinated. But I still feel like that car is going to pull up to my house any day.
Sure.
If you're in New York, that's probably a threat. That's true.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Anyways, so I don't know if you guys have been following this whole back and forth between DeSantis and Biden and the Biden administration. It's been fantastic. Here's Biden kind of starting off with the jab.
Just 2 states, Florida and Texas, account for 1/3 of all new COVID-19 cases in the entire country. Just 2 states.
What kind of cases?
Look, we need leadership from everyone. If some governors aren't willing to do the right thing to beat this pandemic, then they should allow businesses and universities who want to do the right thing to be able to do it.
Oh.
No, he didn't.
I say to these governors, please help.
Please.
If you aren't going to help, at least get out of the way of the people who are trying to do the right thing.
He said they should allow people. Did he hear himself?
Allow people to
do basically what they want to do the right thing.
What they think is the right thing.
What they think is the right thing.
You should allow people to do that.
Is he allowing people in the federal government who don't want to get vaccinated to do the right thing for themselves?
Not one reporter.
Is he allowing contractors who are contracting with the federal government to do the right thing for themselves?
Military?
No, they've got a view of the right thing. And you're going to come along quietly.
That's exactly right.
Come to your house,
we're going to put you in a car.
You can get vaccinated with the fishes.
We're going to make you do the right thing.
But here's the thing is deaths per million, I think the top 5 states in deaths per million, number 1 is New Jersey. Okay. Number 2 is New York, and then Massachusetts is in there somewhere, but I think they're all kind of northeastern states, basically.
Deaths per
million.
Deaths per million.
Coronavirus deaths per million.
Remember when we talked to Dr. Cole on the COVID special, the Delta variant
Thursday,
special, whatever, on Thursday? He pointed out that we have a case-demic.
Yeah, that's right.
A case-demic, meaning when we've been testing people like out the wazoo, and we have... and the PCR test is good for certain things,
right?
But you can get positives for all kinds of reasons, and it doesn't mean you have the disease.
Right?
Doesn't mean you're contagious.
Right?
Having cases. I mean, that doesn't tell us anything.
You really need to go and listen to that show, because what I realized was the same way that an atheist can look at creation and want to push against the truth that God made it
and create a certain narrative out of it,
create a whole false story around that. That's exactly what they're doing the same way, versus looking and saying, "Oh, God made this. It was made by our Creator, and that's how it came to be."
Yep.
Well, anyways, I'm glad the Florida governor is not Russell Moore right now.
Ooh. Joe Biden suggests that if you don't do lockdown policies, then you should, quote, get out of the way. But let me tell you this. If you're coming after the rights of parents in Florida, I'm standing in your way. I'm not going to let you get away with it.
Ooh. Stripology.
You did that.
If you're trying to deny kids a proper in-person education, I'm going to stand in your way, and I'm going to stand up for the kids in Florida. If you're trying to restrict people, impose mandates, if you're trying to ruin their jobs and their livelihoods and their small business, if you are trying to lock people down, I am standing in your way, and I'm standing for the people of Florida. So why don't you do your job? Why don't you get this border secure? And until you do that, I don't want to hear a blip about COVID from you.
I feel God right there.
Is that like a Baptist curse?
Yeah.
A blip.
I don't want to hear a blip.
That's right. It's like,
I blip you.
And I appreciate what I think that was a great example of interposition, how it's supposed to work.
Huge amen.
I'm standing in your way.
But
there's a but there.
There is.
Okay.
I got a couple buts.
Okay.
One is, who's standing in Ron DeSantis' way for their public education? He's like, he's standing in Biden's way so the kids can go to public school. But why are all these parents sending their kids to Ron DeSantis' public schools? Why is Ron DeSantis public education destroying kids?
Yeah. Well,
people don't have to, though. I mean,
parents need to be standing in their way.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's a good point. My thought, though, too, is that while I appreciate everything that Ron DeSantis is doing, he is killing out there, for whatever reason, however his motivations are. He wants to be president, vice president. I don't care. I appreciate what he's doing.
Sure.
But
maybe he wants to be the head of the CDC. Apparently, that's where all the power is right now.
Right now, unelected official. But I also want to say, as a person who's standing in the way, interposing, you need to interpose for freedom. Right, so that a company can choose to make their own decisions and not have you create mandates that force them not to be choose to be vaccinated.
Apparently, we have to keep going over this because we keep getting questions about it.
Oh man,
I have no problem with a governor saying there will be no mandates in our state.
Right. Yeah,
no mandates, meaning like a statewide, citywide, countywide mandates.
Yep.
They should fight for that.
Yeah,
fight
absolutely.
against that. No mandates, no lockdowns, and so on. But that's not the same thing as telling a private business how they have to run their private business. You can't fight tyranny with tyranny. That's the point, because you're just being tyrannical.
So then let me ask.
The problem with tyranny isn't who's in charge.
Right, exactly. And so just the point is that we've been trying to press on this whole issue is that just because the conservative points his gun at the bad guy doesn't mean he's doing good.
Right.
I mean, it's just, if you can exercise power tyrannically over jurisdictions that are not yours,
right?
And there's a short-term gain. Maybe the liberals don't get their way,
right?
But the long term is the next guy in that seat of power says there's long precedent for me to tell you how to run your business. We've been doing that for too long.
And the long-term gain is that you're doing the same thing that the Democrats are doing.
This is exactly why people don't understand this. This is the same thing with critical race theory, and this whole problem that we have with that is that they are using force power, whatever it is, to get and accomplish what they want, and people are like, you can't do that. And then you look back over here and it's like, but we've kind of been operating like that for a long time. So and if we don't like this, then you can't like that. If you don't like critical race theory in your schools, which Florida is really pushing against, then get evolution out too. And how about a whole government system of education that controls?
If your school teaches Darwinian evolution, if it teaches evolution, it already teaches critical race theory.
Right.
That is the origins of CRT.
Right.
Don't tell me you don't want CRT, but then say it's fine to tell them that the way you got here is might makes right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And the survival of the fittest. That's all CRT is, just fleshed out a little bit more.
More detail.
Well, and then this last year, the Constitution hasn't really mattered.
Right.
It hasn't mattered for decades.
For only 12 months.
For only 12 months.
But before that, we were doing great.
But I'm just
if
glad
only we could get back to the 60s.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm cool.
Well, I'm just glad they're just starting to articulate this out loud.
The answer is twofold. One, I've sought out constitutional scholars to determine what is the best
I thought they were extinct.
possibility that would come from executive action or the CDC's judgment. What could they do that was most likely to pass muster constitutionally?
Hit pause real quick, because I want to talk about this real quick. So here's the deal. This is
of the constitutional scholarship.
Yeah, thank you. So what just happened here is we got to talk about the moratorium, right? There was a moratorium on evictions,
right?
And
it was CDC moratorium,
yes.
And the CDC has no constitutional authority,
which the Supreme Court ruled that they couldn't do it,
right?
And so it came to an end, and you had Cori Bush was leading this whole push, and the squad sleeping on the steps.
Right.
AOC was out there and put pressure on Pelosi to say, hey, we need to do something, which is actually, believe it or not, they're right. The legislators should be the ones to come up with laws, believe it or not.
Right. Not the CDC.
And Pelosi said, we can't do anything. Why didn't the CDC do something?
Right.
Well,
that unelected official
to do it. That pressure got put eventually on Trump. I'm pretty sure Nancy Pelosi is putting that, not Trump, Biden. Got that
you
pressure.
Still think he's president too?
You know what? I know. I've been reading too much QAnon stuff. Sorry, my bad. And so Biden now has taken that and decided to put pressure on the CDC and gave him a little call and was like, I need you to do me a favor. And the CDC decides to do him a favor and come out. Anyway, so that's what
I believe in America.
And so Biden is explaining right here why it is the
CDC is renewing this moratorium.
And so the question is,
against the Supreme Court.
Do you think it's going to hold up in court? That's the question that was asked.
Says that it's not likely to pass constitutional muster. Number one.
Okay.
Number one.
But there are several key scholars who think that it may.
Andrews
and
Cuomo.
It's worth the effort. But the present, the court's already ruled on the present eviction moratorium. So I think what you're going to see, and I want to make it clear.
Please.
I told you I would not tell the Justice Department or the medical experts, the scientists, what they should say or do.
Oh.
So I don't want to get ahead. The CDC has to make this. I asked the CDC to go back.
How am I going to tell them?
Other
Just go back and
options
look
that may
at
be available to. You're going to hear from them what those other options are. I have been informed they're about to make a judgment as to potential other options. Whether that option will pass constitutional measure with this administration, I can't tell you. I don't know. There are a few scholars who say it will, and others who say it's not likely to. But at a minimum, by the time it gets litigated, it will probably give some additional time while we're getting that $45 billion out to people who are, in fact, behind in the rent and don't have the money.
That it has this, and this is very important. This is not a new way that they've been operating.
Right.
It didn't really matter if it was constitutional or not. The majority of people, this is how they've been reading the science, folks. The majority of people told him, hey, this is not probably going to pass constitutional muster. Right. And he knows that and still decided to go on and have the CDC bring out an extension of the moratorium, even though they had all the facts in front of them that outweighed. And he said, you know what? This is going to buy us time. Yep. Is that how we do law now? Yeah. Is, hey, it'll buy us time.
It is. Especially this last year.
Apparently.
And all the COVID regulations this last year, the shutdown and everything was all kind of under that umbrella.
There's not a lot
of
time.
They shut down their state and they didn't have constitutional backing for it.
Yeah.
I got arrested. They didn't have constitutional backing for it.
Right.
By
the time it gets litigated,
bars and restaurants. They've been doing this play this whole last year.
Yeah.
I think we should do this with abortion.
Yeah.
We don't care about Roe versus Wade. Except
we would have the foundation, the backing for it to protect life.
Roe versus Wade was the old way.
Yeah.
And now we're doing this the new way.
I think we're missing our opportunity to flip over tables. We got some more content, more stuff coming up with Cross Politic. Maybe we'll talk about when the time is to flip over a few tables next on Cross Politic.
We're going to talk to Jason about what he's doing.
Let me give you this picture. Because I don't think we think enough of sex.
One of the things we have to do is we have to think like Christians, and we have to think like Christians in every area. You can't simply have a piecemeal approach to this. We have to have a biblical worldview across the board. Across the board.
The sexual union between a man and his wife is a living, breathing, awe-inspiring expression of the ecstasy of the union that the church awaits.
People are the most valuable resource in the universe.
So in 2016, we found out that our youngest son, Asher, had cancer. And I will just never forget crying in the lobby of the hospital on the phone with the Samaritan Ministries person on the other end who was, who ended the call saying, let's just pray about this.
When it does hit you and you really wonder what's going to happen, it worked.
It continues to be affordable, it works, and it pays the bills.
Constitution.
There we go. Much better. Much better.
This is how I learned how to break
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Is that how you do it?
Was that math?
Counting?
Was that math and hip hop?
Welcome back to Cross Politic. And I have to once again apologize for the way that we began this segment.
A secret convention, delegates from 12 states.
Okay, yes, is it new?
Welcome back to Cross Politic. I'm excited to let you know about our new partnership with Dime Payments.
I like those guys.
Dime Payments is a Christian-owned processing payment business. Every business needs a payment process system. Go to dimepayments.com/FLF and sign your business up. Working with them supports us, and they won't cancel you like Stripe canceled President Trump. They won't cancel you like MailChimp canceled the Babylon Bee.
That's true.
Check them out. At least have a phone call. Tell them that Cross Politic sent you. Go to dimepayments.com/FLF.
And actually, if you're not ever going to use one of the sponsors, that's totally fine. But it's really helpful? Hey, thank you so much for supporting Cross Politic.
Sure,
appreciate it. I mean, seriously.
And Christian companies.
I mean, yes.
Seriously.
Because when you're fleeing because you don't want to get your vaccine shot, you'll be looking for a job, and you're going to want them to exist somewhere out there.
Right.
All right, so the Biden administration obviously doesn't really care about the Constitution to kind of get their way.
Constitution.
With the CDC moratorium. And freedom. What is freedom?
Freedom is bunk.
Freedom is bunk. I think we got that coming.
Yes, we need to help people understand that this freedom argument is bunk. I mean, at the end of the day, we are losing freedoms because people are unvaccinated. And I don't want to shame anyone who has questions, because every day I talk to people. I talked to at least 5 people today who had questions and help them get their questions answered and move them towards vaccinations. But people need to understand the real consequences. And the consequences are, as I said last week, more mitigation. And as I'm telling you this week, I'm predicting closures in the future, because we are not going to be able to rein this variant back in before we get enough spread that's going to start causing closures again. And so I don't want my kids to have to go through another year of virtual school.
They're your kids.
I don't want our hospitals to be overwhelmed and for them to be shut down for elective surgeries like we saw last year. Our freedoms are being impinged upon because we have far too many people unvaccinated.
Boom, boom, ain't it great to be crazy? Boom, boom, ain't it great to be crazy?
He's insane.
If he was talking, so just all of a sudden I had this like little flash as he was talking. I'm thinking, like, if he was talking like this during slavery.
Oh my
Freedom
goodness.
is bunk.
Yeah, he's talking to fellow slaves. And he's saying to them, look, you have to do what master says.
Yeah.
And then you'll be okay. What real freedom is not bucking against what your master says. Do what master says. The argument for freedom is bunk.
Yeah.
That's basically what he's saying.
Yeah. He's saying, hey, you don't have to get a shorter chain. Right. We get this long chain right now. Right. And if you try to resist it, you might end up with a shorter chain. Right. What we have right now is freedom. Right. Look at this long chain.
There's not real freedom out there. That's what he's saying, right?
And then at the end of it, he uses it like they'll give it back to us.
Yeah, right,
guys.
Yeah, we might get a longer chain later on.
Like, there's a name for guys like that. You know what I mean? And it's like this is really embarrassing, because something that CNN is like, they are so big on the racial stuff, right? And for them to hear this idea of freedom, and for him to correlate it with the government giving you options to do things in the world. Right. Could you imagine if Trump had said this?
Oh no.
I mean, could you imagine if Trump had said this at a rally somewhere in the South after Charleston?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Hey guys,
nuclear.
The freedom to take down statues is bunk.
Yeah.
Right. Like, this is amazing, and it's passing for mustard right now. But
remember too, just a little note on what he said in there. Like, okay, like we closed down hospitals before,
right?
Because look, the hospitals were not overrun.
They weren't.
They were not. Right. We didn't do elective surgeries. We didn't do all these secondary things, and we didn't have to stop doing them.
We had ships.
We chose to do that. Hospitals were not overrun. Tons of tents. Our tents sat out there empty for six months here in our town.
New York had ships out there waiting to serve people. Empty.
You remember one of the number one industries that lost the most jobs during the shutdown was the healthcare industry.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one of the top industries.
We shot ourselves in both feet.
Yep.
Yeah, we did.
And he says, obey them quick, because otherwise they might have to shoot us in the foot again.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
This is when we've been talking a lot about this, and it's been happening across Christian cultures, but we need to get back to this creator and creature setup. What he's talking about, freedoms don't come from your government.
Right.
Freedoms don't come from man.
Right.
God is the one who establishes those freedoms. Right. He's the one who establishes.
Directly.
Yes, and then men are supposed to submit to that,
right.
and government is supposed to protect it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Not say. And so when we get those two mixed up, what we start doing is making government God. Right. They're the ones that says this is what the new design of what freedom looks like,
which is always slavery,
and it's and like, doesn't any other way.
That's exactly right.
I don't think. Go ahead, Jason.
But Augustine talks about the libido dominandi, that people that are slaves inside end up slaves outside as well, and that the way out is actually to be freed from the shackles of our own libido, our own desires for evil.
Right.
So we're actually getting a government externally that looks like the government that we've had of our own souls.
Right.
For a long time.
And Toby brought this up at our last rally in South Dakota, where we have tyrants in our own heart that we have to defeat. Right. And if you don't defeat the tyrants in your own heart, you get tyrants outside. You get tyrants ruling us, and that's what we have right now.
The Boston mayor, though, she actually, at least, she's trying to think in a straight line.
Yeah.
Which I think is going to get her in trouble.
There's a long history in this country of people needing to show their papers.
The mayor then references slavery, former President Trump, and birtherism.
During slavery, post-slavery, as recent as, what the immigrant population has to go through here. We heard Trump with the birth certificate nonsense. Here, we want to make sure that we are not doing anything that would further create a barrier for residents. We want to make sure that we are giving every opportunity for folks to get vaccinated. When it comes to what businesses may choose to do, we know that those types of things are difficult to enforce when it comes to vaccine.
Now, tonight, mayoral candidate Andrea Campbell tweeting this kind of rhetoric is dangerous, showing proof of vaccination is not slavery or birtherism. And candidate Michelle Wu saying anyone in a position of leadership should be using that position to build trust in vaccines. Tonight, Mayor Janey putting out a statement clarifying there will be no mandates when it comes to certain business sectors.
First, Mayor Janey, a lot of respect for you. That was a bold move, and I don't know all of your politics, but I think you're dead on with that, and I love to be able to talk to you if you ever want to come on here and talk about that particular topic, because I think you're right about it. The other thing is, my wife said something. She's like, "How is it that what Janey said is controversial, but what Bill de Blasio did in New York isn't?"
Right,
forcing restaurants to only serve the vaccinated.
Right.
This is the key to the city.
Yep. Right.
You cannot do anything in this city. You cannot have fun. You cannot live like a New Yorker unless you've got this vaccine. Proof of vaccine.
We are the people who are in the desert with Jesus and saying, it was so much better back there with Pharaoh. We didn't have to work for all this stuff. The other thing, too, is the last candidate there who's running for mayor says that she needs to make sure that she encourages people
have trust
in the vaccine.
Yeah.
She had no problem doing that. She said that. Yeah. What she didn't trust was the history that the government has with requiring papers for people. Right. Mm-hmm. I hope Boston folks can see that and say, wait a second, one of these things is not like the other. There's one where you got to, at least with Janey.
And this goes back to your point, though, about authority and power and so forth. Is we're not supposed to put our trust in man.
Right.
If you put your trust in man, in the power of man and government and so on, you're always going to be disappointed. And you're always going to end up enslaved.
Yeah.
So we put our trust in God. And God is the one who establishes certain authorities and gives those authorities certain limits.
Yeah.
That's the only way that you're safe. Otherwise, if you're under the authority of man, they're corrupt.
Yeah.
It's not trusting vaccines. What that's code for is trust your government, trust people, put your trust in man, which absolutely not. I will not do that.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say there's certain Republican leadership this last year that has really kind of woken up. You're seeing it with DeSantis. You've seen it even with Cruz. I think Cruz is kind of put on a different, gone to a different level. Some of that politician. Yeah. I've always kind of looked at Cruz. I've liked him, but he always comes off a little slimy to me, a little bit, but a little slick. Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it. But Rand Paul, this guy particularly is bringing the heat.
But the bottom line is, for those who are saying, I won't go to a restaurant unless we force everybody to be vaccinated. If you're vaccinated, you are overwhelmingly safe from hospitalization and death. Mind your own business.
Bars.
Mind your own business.
Mind your own business.
It's pretty simple.
One of the things when we had Nate on Thursday, what he said was so good to me, and we didn't even get a chance to really dig any deeper into it. But he asked the question of, where are you sacrificing? What altar are you sacrificing? There's altars all over the place. Yeah. And what altar are you sacrificing at? And I couldn't help but think, when we first heard the news of the coronavirus and all that stuff going down, where did you go for help? Did you go and say, what is the government going to do to fix all this stuff? And how are they going to? Because the altar that you go to, the sacrifice to, that's the God that you're worshiping. And we don't always see it as clearly in that way. But the other thing that I noticed was that the false God made sure it was very clear that our pipeline to the church was cut off.
Yeah.
They cut off very clearly our pipeline to go to God and have worship there with him, covenant renewal before God in public to ask him for help.
Right.
And everybody just took it.
Yep.
And we didn't even see the play that was being run on us, that the enemy is saying, we don't want you to sacrifice at this altar. And that's what I think we've been wanting to communicate this whole time, is they don't get to tell us where we get to sacrifice to. We worship the true God. He's the one that gives the standard, lays out the conditions on which we obey him, and we follow suit regardless of what man says. And here we are again, back in this situation where everybody is wondering, what are we going to do? What's going to happen? Right. What if the government does this? We should have the mindset of, here's what we're not going to do.
Yep.
Right? Here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to shut down.
Right.
You're not going to tell me to put in some of my body I don't want to put in there. You ain't going to do that.
Right.
I'm going to tell you that right now. Right. What you're not going to do is blaspheme God and act like God. That's what you're not going to do.
Right.
You know, that's the kind of attitudes that we need to be having. And you would have thought we would have repented of saying, okay, you know what? We missed it last time.
Right.
But what we not going to do is miss it this time.
Silver, hallelujah. Gold, hallelujah. Dribology.
Well, J.D. Greer hadn't really preached a sermon on this, so other pastors hadn't been able to
pick up on it yet.
So, but this is the thing. That is freedom.
That, amen.
Okay, we're not talking about something different. He didn't change the subject. Like, this is freedom. I mean, what was it that Moses demanded of Pharaoh? Let my people go what? So that they may go serve me at the mountain. So that they may worship me at the mountain. What did they go out and do at Mount Sinai? God didn't change his mind. He gives them instructions for how to serve him, how to worship him. And then the rest of Exodus, that none of the movies apparently, is all about building the tabernacle. It's like, not once, but twice.
Right.
It's almost like it's important or something. Like God is wanting to emphasize this. All the instructions for how they're going to meet with God at the center of their camp.
Or out in the wilderness.
Here's how you're going to do it, and then they go do it. Because what? Because that's freedom.
Yeah.
Because when God is at the center, when his altar's at the center, when
you're building his house,
that's freedom. Everything else flows out from that freedom. That worship is freedom. And this goes back to what Jason was saying earlier. I mean, you don't know what freedom is. You're born enslaved. That's what original sin means. That's what Augustine is talking about.
Yep.
You're born enslaved to your sin. You're born enslaved to your passions and your lusts. And you want stuff that kills you.
Yeah.
What you're hungry for and thirsty for is bad for you, and it crushes you. And so God has to come and give you a new heart with new desires. And then in worshiping him, being turned to him, you actually find out what it means to be human, what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman made in his image. And that's real freedom.
So you remember last year when Pastor Gordon came on our show, Kerry Gordon came on our show. He kind of pulled a Ron DeSantis for his church.
Yeah.
And the idea that any member of the government on any Tuesday is going to have more compassion, more love, more concern, or any duty whatsoever to take care of my church is insulting. This is my 25th year in the pastorate. I marry them and I bury them. And no one cares about my congregation more than I do.
Oof.
And we have wonderful medical professionals in our own church. We can keep our own counsel. We don't need the tentacles of a disruptive, bankrupting, sodomizing, disgusting institution like what our federal government has become, or our state government.
Message.
The same ones that murder children every single day. They are the last people that I want advice from.
Wow.
Don't forget that.
Yeah, they are the last people. I mean, what he's talking about is exactly what Cuomo's talking about. I mean, that's the creepy, sodomizing government he's talking about. They lit up the Empire State Building pink. Celebrating the murder and slaughter of the infants, and now they want to protect life?
Yeah, don't buy that.
Calling it.
More cross-politic coming up next. Makes you want to go to church, doesn't it?
Especially his.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Robert Borton, CEO of Classical Conversations. Our most precious commodity is time. No one has ever lied on their deathbed wishing they had spent more time making money. They all wish they had spent more time creating a legacy. Our modern education system steals that legacy, steals that time from our children. That's why I'm passionate about homeschooling. That's why at Classical Conversations we want to give you more time to create that legacy, follow your passions, and glorify God. Visit classicalconversations.com for more information.
That's a commercial.
This is not hip hop.
No, it's not.
This is not helping.
I gave you guys some reprieve.
This is cross-politic freestyle, though.
This is just for you, Toby.
Thank you. Now I don't know what to do. Welcome back to Cross Politic.
This episode is brought to you by club members.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. Great. Hey, y'all, we're really grateful. We've had Jason in the studio before. It's been a little while, but he's been here all show, and he's just been dropping bombs
dimes.
and
dimes.
Yeah.
Like
Like dime
processing. Yep.
This is brought to you by.
That's
Dime
great.
Processing.
Jason,
and the dimes of.
I like to have a bio for our guests, but there's not one on these notes.
Well,
so
his oldest daughter's now going to New St. Andrews College.
That's true.
Wow.
And she just moved out of the house.
Moved out of the house.
You're old now.
I am officially old.
Yeah. Really old.
That's got to be weird.
To get old?
No.
Oh no, yeah, to have my daughter leave. Yeah, super weird. I mean, I'm super proud of her. She's doing amazing. But yeah, I'm also like my baby.
And you're working with Lore
TV. Yep.
And are you directing a show?
Show running, writing and producing.
Show writing, producing.
Yeah.
Do you call it running?
Show running. Yeah.
Show running.
That's what the producer on a television show is called.
Okay. And
that's great.
And you guys just filmed a pilot.
Just finished filming a pilot. Yep.
For what show?
The show is called The PKs.
The PKs.
The PKs.
Pastor's Kids.
Pastor's Kids. So it's a show about home life and.
I thought it might be pony knives.
Pony knives.
What?
The K is silent.
I think that would be kind of great.
So that PKs, but the K is silent and knife.
Yeah.
I don't know, Toby.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's right.
So the preacher's kids, pastor's
kids. Yeah. Okay. So it's a show about a pastor's family, a multi-generational pastor's family that is navigating those waters between home life and church life and using humor to survive living in the fishbowl of ministry.
So it's a comedy.
It's a comedy. It's a sitcom.
Do Christians do this? Do Christians write sitcoms?
No. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, unfortunately,
Jason.
it hasn't been. We haven't been doing that in the past, but
not for Christians. I think a lot of Christians have been writing in other sitcoms that have made them really well.
Yeah, but maybe not.
We haven't been writing
behind the scenes.
No, Jason talks about this a lot, and you can keep going on this. But one of the things he says,
you should just talk for him.
You know what? I'll do it. Yeah,
David directed the episode.
So, wait.
Yeah,
have we talked to you about this?
No, we haven't talked to me about this.
You're the director.
Yeah,
and he killed it. It's so good.
Thank you. But one of the things that was that when Jason asked me to do this, one of the things that was really important was that we invited people into, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the Cosby Show.
This is a story
all about.
I knew we would have some hip hop on this segment.
I like to take a minute and just sit right there. I tell you how I
the Prince of
town called Bel-Air.
All right.
I'd also
Before
like to
we have
West
Philadelphia
born. No, wait. We don't want to pay for that. We don't want to pay for all that.
We can't afford it.
We'll go broke.
Fine.
Yeah. But one of the things that a lot of the great shows and even secularism does is that it invites you into their world. The gay pride or stuff like that is huge.
Yeah.
Black media and black film are huge with inviting you to their world, inviting you into their culture so you can see the beauty of it. Lin-Manuel Miranda, he has done that so many times so well.
Who's that?
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Thank you. I said it wrong.
Yeah.
Mike Lindell Miranda.
Yeah, that's it. Message.
My pillow?
No, but what he did, I can't remember
In the Heights.
No.
Hamilton.
Yeah.
Okay.
The way he brought you into Hamilton to embrace American culture and the beauty of it, no one had did anything like that in a very long time. And so anyway, what the world, what they have done is they've kind of put their culture out there, and they said, "This is beautiful. You should embrace it."
Right. And now they're doing that with really horrific things,
right,
and perverse things,
absolutely,
and saying, "Come into my world. It's beautiful."
Exactly. And what we haven't been doing, we've been spending a lot of time on the Logos side of things, which is really good. We need that, but that is usually at the end of the ethos and the pathos, right? And so we haven't been doing a very good job of showing people the beauty of what's inside of Christian culture. And so what the goal was to do was to try and open up and show the beauty of the Christian culture in this sitcom. And one of the things that we talked about that was very important to us, and jump in anywhere here, was covenant. How the covenant was more important than blood.
I saw a video. Was there like some kind of little promo, that you guys put out? And Sho Baraka,
yes,
is she like the pastor?
Yeah.
So
he plays the Reverend Chuck D. Sharp. He's a fantastic actor.
Chucky D.
He really is.
But he said in the promo, he mentioned covenant. He said that we wanted this to be a central theme. So.
So it's about a multi-generational pastor's family, but it's also a multi-generational adopted family. So you've got the grandfather's a reverend. He has biological and adopted kids. One of his adopted sons is the grandfather's played by Mike James, hilarious comedian out of Arizona, white guy. He has a black son who's played by Show, who is then also a pastor. Grandfather's a Baptist pastor. His son becomes a Presbyterian pastor, and then they have.
I like how you made Show be the Presbyterian pastor. That's good. That's
but then
did he baptize any babies on set?
give him a couple episodes.
Hey, he's going to be really acting when he does that.
He said he's a good actor.
He was a fantastic actor. I mean, I was hoping that he would be a great actor, and then he came on, and I was blown away. He was a really great actor. And then he has adopted children, biological children, and adopted children himself. He's got black children, white children, Native American, the whole gambit in the family. And one of the themes we wanted to hit is the defining thing about who we are is not our biology.
Right.
It's our covenant relationship with God and with God's people and with our families. So that's a big part of it. So the twins in the show are different races. They have the same birthday, and so they're like, well, of course we're twins. Because we're brothers that have the same birthday. That's what a twin is.
Right.
And so so there's a lot of kind of running gags like that are fun and enjoyable, but also have that deeper meaning that the point is that who we are is defined by our relationship to God. And then the relationships that God calls are important, the covenant relationships in our lives.
And it's funny how we've gotten away from some of the basics on that. Like, we talked a little bit about this with the, who was it on here? Gonzatti.
Blaine Gonzatti.
Blaine Gonzatti. We were talking about that a little bit. One of the things I've seen in Christendom, regardless of where it is, abortion, race, all this stuff, everybody's forgetting that's family, yo.
Yep.
Like I don't care what the situation is. There's this, man, mobsters get this stuff. You don't split on the family, right? Like that, we can have our inside fights and all that stuff is cool, but when it comes down to it, this is family, right? And so we'll chastise each other, we'll do this rightly, but when it comes down to it, you don't just run off because you like the other team playing a little better. There is a covenant that you're tied to.
Pastor Kerry Gordon was embodying that in the last segment when he says, "No one cares for my people like I do."
Yeah. Right.
That was love talking. That was covenant. Talking.
That's
there.
Right. That's right.
He's saying these are my people. We care. We have our own. We keep our own counsel.
Right.
Not out of sort of an individualist or we're an island kind of thing, but saying no, we are a family.
Yeah.
We take care of ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, and that was one thing too with like Show. I didn't know if Show was going to do it. Like that was who we thought of, was like, this would be perfect.
Yeah.
And there was a couple reasons why he thought it would be perfect. First of all, he's really talented. He should be doing a lot more acting, honestly.
Yeah.
He's really good at it. But also, we know that we share differences. And one of the things that we have been talking about a lot, and we're seeing in our culture with ethnic Gnosticism and just Gnosticism so permeated everywhere, is that some of this stuff doesn't get worked out being separate from each other.
Yeah.
Our relationship to each other and some of the problems that we see in the conversations we're having aren't arguments that we can just have online. We need to be in person working these things out in relationship. And, Show and I think surprisingly, we agree a lot more than we disagree. But we share different political, some theological positionings, and yet we wanted to be able to work together and let those two things collide and let sanctification start happening there and the real conversations that we need to be having. And so it was a blast to see what we wanted to create in the show actually happening in relationship on the set. And so that kind of stuff bled through, I believe, all the way to the screen.
Okay, so but your show is titled PK.
Yep.
Pastor's kids.
Pastor's kids.
Not pony.
Is there any pastors sleeping around with gay hookers? I mean, what's going on here? Because the name Pastor Kid has all sorts of variations and connotations with me.
So we have.
I'm sitting right here. I mean,
I'm not talking. To be clear, I'm not talking about Toby.
All right. I'm just
no.
Sure.
Yeah. No gay hookers. Toby's. Yeah. So what we have, what we're aiming at is a family that is that's functioning well, but the drama is real, right? Just like a real family, you know, the drama's real and folks struggle, but it's not, it's a PG sitcom that is aimed at the kind of thing that families will enjoy sitting down and watching together. And you're being invited in to see the church. I mean, you mentioned the Fresh Prince and the Cosby Show. There was also Family Matters.
Yep.
You know, one of the things that the 80s and the 90s did was open up black culture through sitcoms to people because they loved their own culture. And they said, hey, we want you guys to come in and see this because we think you'll like it too. And, you know, you don't get Black Lives Matter. You don't get any of that without the Cosby Show, without Family Matters, without the Fresh Prince, because people, people in the middle of North Idaho can sing the theme song to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, right?
Right.
I was in Texas when I learned that, but we can say North Idaho.
We can look at the Fresh Prince said, hey, you know what we love? We love our own people. We love our culture, and we want you to see it. And so they invited everybody in. We're trying to do the same thing with PKs with the church. When I was pastoring down in Santa Cruz, there was a park next door to our church, and every Tuesday was evangelism day. And so I would sit my chair out at the church looking at the park, and any male that walked into the park, God sent me. Right. So walk over and say, hey, nice to meet you. I'm the pastor of the church right here. What's your name? You know, and the number of times the questions would be, so are you guys Fox News Christians? I would say, explain to me what that means. I don't watch Fox News, so I'm unaware of what that means.
He's like, all right.
And he'd tell me what a Fox News Christian was in his mind. But that was his introduction to Christianity, was Fox News. So
that's too bad.
That's why we're doing what we're doing here. Though.
They have but we have apologized for the church instead of saying, hey, come on in. We had this older gentleman, this wonderful guy in our church, that would stand out in front for about a half an hour before church started, and anybody that walked past, invite them in. Hey, come on in. Church is about to start. Come on in. And he would just walk over and he'd say, hey, church is starting. Come on in. And he would just pull people in. And
highways and hedges. Huh?
Yeah, it was amazing. And he was 80-year-old grandfather, and so he could get away with stuff. Yeah.
All right, Grandpa.
People would be out walking their dog, and they'd literally just walk their dog through the front door of the church and pull their dog into their lap and sit through church. It was amazing. But he loved his church. He loved his people enough to say, "You're going to love this. Come on in." And we had folks coming to the Lord through his invitational ministry, which literally was just that 30 minutes before church. So. But that's what it looks like to love your own people, is to say, hey, we love it here. You would too. Come on in. You got to see it. We're trying to do that with the church without sugarcoating it. You know, you still got the deacon that gives all the grief to the pastor, and you've got the youth pastor that can't quite figure out what he's supposed to be doing, played by Chris Wineland, who's hilarious.
He killed that role.
Oh my gosh.
Because he used to be a youth pastor.
Yeah, he used to be a youth pastor.
He was just in this role of himself.
Exactly.
I'm not acting. Like, this is real.
So to just say, like, no, we love our people, and we got crazy uncles.
Yeah.
But they're uncles, and they're crazy, and we love them.
Yeah.
So to really to try and open up the doors of the church and have the real drama of the church, but take a comedic posture towards the drama
that isn't poking necessarily at it in a way that isn't beautiful. There's sometimes we can just poke like those crazy folks over. It's to say, no, that's my uncle.
Yeah,
and everybody's like, yeah, it is your uncle. Yeah, it is. And I love that.
You look crazy.
You know, that's exactly
cringe smile.
Yeah. So September 9th through 11th, we're going to be out in Lebanon, Tennessee. We're going to have a talk, sexual Gnosticism and Christian humanism, right? Just we've talked a little bit about this. I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Christian humanism,
right?
Yeah, but humanism is bad.
Yeah, right. I want you to kind of.
I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah, beforehand. Right. So Christian humanism is an older way of talking about. There's a number of parts to it, but one part of it. So this is a lot of the the soil that the Reformation grew in, right? The plant that was the Reformation grew in the soil of Christian humanism, and some of the doctrinal distinctives were that it's good to be human, right? That being made a human is a blessing that God gave us, and because we're made in the image of God, anytime we meet another human, there's this opportunity, whether it's in writing or in person, there's an opportunity to learn something about God. Learning something about yourself because you're made in the image of God is also an opportunity to learn about God when it's all seen in the proper relationship and of His creation, and when Jesus is the point that holds all things together, like it talks about in Colossians, that being a human is a good thing, and that Jesus came to restore us to our humanity. Right, so that growth in maturity is becoming more and more human, right? And that Jesus became a man and went through all of the stages of life that a human being goes through, and that is what He took to the cross with Him, so that everything about being a human can be restored.
Amen.
So that's that doctrine of Christian humanism. Usually, all you hear when you start talking about Christian humanism is they say, well, ad fontes was a part of the
back to the sources.
Back to the sources. And that was there because, like Calvin says, even the pagan poets were put there for God's people to enjoy so that we could learn more about God because they're made in the image of God. Right? So that there is an embrace of what it is to be created and what it is to then be placed in what Calvin calls the theater of God's glory, that this whole world is a stage on which we as human beings are put in order to glorify God. That's all good, and the Reformation grew up in the midst of that soil, and but we have tried to sort of pick the Reformation up and replant it in a different soil, and it just changed the color of a lot of our flowers.
So normally when I think of humanism,
if they grow at all,
I don't think that's the worst of our problems.
Yep. So normally when I think of humanism, I think of humans are inherently good. When I think of kind of worldly humanism,
right?
And so, but when you say Christian humanism, I mean, I guess this is kind of how the world operates. They grab something that's kind of right and they twist it into something that's an absolute lie.
Yeah. So secular humanism took what was ours.
God's creation is good.
God's creation is good. It's good to be a human being.
Right.
And the maturation of the human race is one of the reasons we're here.
The sanctification of the human race.
Yeah.
And what we aren't talking about is that Christian humanism is that we are inherently good. What we're saying is God's creation is good, but not in ourselves we're inherently good.
That we are sinners that need to be redeemed, but the problem is not being a human being. The problem is the way we have used our humanity. The problem is not that we are humans. And you see often that when we start talking about salvation, we talk about being saved from my body, being rescued from the difficulties of life, being
we have a whole eschatology on that.
So, because here's the deal: we weren't created to go to heaven. That is not why God made us. Heaven,
and that's it.
We only go to heaven because something went wrong, right? So we're created to live as human beings. And
on this created
earth, and we will. So heaven is a waiting room, while we wait around for the restoration of God's original intention, which is the resurrection. The number of times I've talked to people and started explaining to them the resurrection, and they say, "Oh my gosh, where did you get that?" And you're like, "Well, I mean, it's literally in the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed. That was a central, important doctrine. It's been completely lost, and so instead we think, I'm here to go to heaven when I die." You think, well, you never would have even gone to heaven when you died if it weren't for your sin. So
it's funny.
So the meek are going to inherit the earth.
This is a sermon. You preached a sermon about 3 weeks ago now, where you talked about the restoration of the earth, and you were talking about like the new heavens and the new earth is going to be here. Right? It's going to be tangible. The whole transformation. We've missed all of the beauty that happens. Can you just kind of recap some of that? You remember any of it?
Yeah, well, I was just keying off of the language in 2 Corinthians where it says that anyone who is in Christ is a new creation.
Right.
And I just wanted to sort of push in two directions. One is I just wanted, our community is heavily, post-millennial and gets a lot of the sort of optimistic eschatology that the kingdom is coming and so on. So one of the directions I wanted to push is don't forget, though, that begins in every human heart.
That's right.
It begins inside.
Yeah.
We don't want to, we're not Gnostics, so we don't leave it inside.
Right.
But don't forget that it begins inside. And so I wanted to emphasize that for our people in particular, in our community, that gets a heavy doses of what you might call Christian humanism and an optimistic eschatology. But remember, the new creation begins in here.
Yeah.
You have to be a new creature, and that is heaven beginning inside of you now. And you can't work for what God is doing in this world if you don't already have it inside you now, which is Christ in you, the Holy Spirit in you, heaven in you. It's actually the new creation.
Yeah.
It's begun inside you.
Right. Well, and what you're pushing back against is like the predominating view right now is that we are born, we're sinners, we need to be saved, we get saved, we go to heaven, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like our life stops in heaven. But what Scripture actually teaches is that we're going to inherit the earth.
Yep.
So we're going to spend actually all eternity with the gates open, with the ladder there between heaven and earth, actually living our lives here out on this planet. For eternity.
Right. So and it's a real misunderstanding if you say, okay, yes, we get saved, and then we just go to heaven. You don't understand what you got. Like you don't understand.
Right.
Like it's kind of a Gnostic view a little bit. We go to heaven, we kind of lose our bodies.
But if a new creation has begun in you, then what is God doing in this world?
He's recreating
the heavens and the earth. It's the new heavens, it's the new earth, and that's what He's begun in you is what He's working out in history, in time.
And so my oldest daughter, who's now off to college, when she was
do you feel old?
7 or so, yeah, I do. I feel old. Thank you, and I'm loving it. And my oldest daughter, though, she's about 7 years old, we got goldfish to learn how to be responsible, and goldfish died.
Be like Noah,
right? Goldfish
the first day in her dorm room.
no, this was when she was 7.
Okay,
right? And so we take it in, we do the first goldfish down the toilet flush, and my daughter's standing there, and she says, Dad, in the resurrection, is the goldfish going to swim back up the toilet?
Right.
But
I said,
that's a glorious question.
Most likely, honey.
Somebody's going to be really surprised in the resurrection.
It's going to be a very different kind of toilet.
Right. But that's exactly the right
gold
question.
Toilet.
God is going to put all things right. Right, and including the death of her goldfish, and because that's not something good. That's something that's a grief, and so that's exactly the right question. What are the mechanics of God putting things right?
Yeah,
but the reason it's the right question is because that's also the question that we're supposed to begin asking now, so that we can use our hands
Start living that way.
Right.
That's
so
exactly
we bring that future in which God has put all things right by faith into the present by how we act now, and so that's what we do.
And this is because the death and resurrection is tangible. It's real.
It is. Yep.
And when we rise again from the dead, and God recreates the heavens and new earth, He's not recreating the earth in such a way where it disappears and it's gone.
Right.
The house you're living in now, Lord willing, will be the house that you receive when we inherit the earth. The trees that you planted now, what you're doing here on earth matters for all eternity.
Right. I mean, unless there's
the trees you plant.
The trees,
the grass you cut, it all matters for all eternity.
This world, these atoms, these molecules will be glorified. In 1 Corinthians 15, when Paul's talking about the resurrection, he says there's several things there. I mean, you just talked about fish and the resurrection, and a bunch of people are like, "What are you talking about?" But Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15 that our bodies are like seeds, and different things that God made is different seed. So he says there's one seed for birds, there's one seed for animals, there's one seed for fish, and there's one seed for human beings. That's where we get that idea, is it's all seed going into the ground. Our bodies are seed going into the ground. It's going to come out, and our glorified bodies are going to be the fruit of of that. That's the resurrection. But at the end of 1 Corinthians 15, he says, therefore, do not lose heart.
Yeah.
Right? He says that what you're doing now, it matters forever.
And he describes it in terms of the way you use the members of your body.
Right.
The way you use your hands matters now, because you're either using them in a way, in a posture and in a shape that is analogous, or is in the same posture that you're going to be using then, in which those things will last forever, or you're not, and it's things that burn up.
The thing to keep in mind in all this,
go ahead.
is we still haven't changed subject from the beginning of the show. Okay, we're still talking about what it means to be free. This is freedom.
Yeah.
Right? Freedom is being who God made you to be. He is the great giver. He is the maker. He is the creator. He is Shakespeare. He is Mozart. He is the one who created the stage for us to act on and display his glory. That's what freedom is. And so as you lean in towards the resurrection, being the man that God made you to be, the woman that God made you to be, using the gifts that God gave you, and you begin by faith enacting parts of that resurrection even now, that new creation even now, that is freedom. But you can't be that free man or that free woman unless Christ is at the center, unless worship is at the center, unless what's happened inside you is freedom.
That's right.
Yeah.
That new creation is absolute freedom, and that's how you know what freedom is. Otherwise, you're like the Surgeon General saying all this freedom talk is bunk.
Right.
You're like the slave to the fellow slave saying there's no freedom out there.
Right.
It's only a length of chain issue. You can get 10 feet, 5 feet, or 2 feet. So let's go for the 10 feet, guys.
Yep.
And Jesus came to set us free.
Yeah, Augustine says that the answer to the libido dominandi, the domination of our desires, is not to get rid of our desires, but to rightly order our desires according to the way God designed us.
That's right.
According to
cut with the grain,
our nature. Yeah. Right. So to love God for himself and to love everything else because of the way that it is either drawing you towards God or an example of God's beauty.
This is where covenant is also all connected.
Yes.
The center of it is our covenant through Christ with God, but you don't come to Christ and then it's just you and Jesus.
Yep.
It's you and all his people from every tribe, from every nation, right? From every language. That's the covenant. And that covenant is real. It's with a man, Jesus, at the right hand of the Father, and it's with his people who have hands and feet and faces. And that's how God is remaking everything.
Lebanon, Tennessee, September 9th through 11th. That's going to be our breakout session with Uncle Gary. I'm looking forward to it. Guys, I was sitting here thinking and listening to all of this. I didn't say much, but I'm just thinking to myself, this is the weirdest political show I've ever seen out there.
People always say that whenever I show up.
But I mean, it's just that
Pastor kids.
It's just, anyway,
Ron
praise God.
DeSantis.
It's just, I love it, but it's just weird. Praise God for it. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until next week, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic.
Mow your yard with like a new vision, you know?
We did not design a cookie-cutter curriculum meant to chop students into appropriately shaped submissives or snowflakes for the secular zeitgeist. We designed our curriculum the way we did because we want our graduates to be equipped to stand courageously against that destructive zeitgeist and to honor their maker and how they, body, mind, and soul, battle to save their communities and the entire Western world from our current diseased insanity. New St. Andrews College is not in the business of rubber stamping graduates for this particular job market or that particular career. We aren't happy unless our graduates are equipped to tackle any constructive cultural task anywhere, from courtrooms to hospitals to job sites to movie sets to the highest risk job and the most important setting of all, the raising and training of the next generation of immortal souls around dining room tables and in pews. The world may have gone mad, but it's not the first time. It has been saved before and by particular people, many of whom shared a very particular type of education. Augustine, Calvin, Jefferson, Churchill, and many lesser-known heroes in times of madness all had one type of education, one type of training in common. And it's the same kind of rigorous education we currently pursue surrounded by the rolling wheat fields of Idaho. By God's grace, our civilization will be saved, or rebuilt, from the smoking ruins. The men and women capable of such a task, capable of fearless joy and fiery laughter, all while undertaking such hard cultural labor, those are the kind of graduates we want, the kind we expect. They are why we exist, and why we teach what we teach. So you might call it a major in world building, or culture shaping, or a major in saving civilization. We call it classical Christian liberal arts. New St. Andrews College, saving civilization since 1994.